In this video, I want to talk about something that has really sped up my workflow for exteriors, drone photos, twilight photos, things like that. And that is going to be linear profiles. We'll get into it when we get into Lightroom, but linear profiles are simply an easy way to start with a more neutral image as opposed to having a Adobe color, camera standard, camera, landscape, whatever, that applies its own kind of contrast and interprets the data in a way that is more pleasing to us and our eyes, and it tends to make images just feel a little over contrasted. They don't really operate the way that you want them to or respond to your edits like you want them to, and the colors are a lot harder to get correct. So linear profiles are a great way that I have found, with a little bit of learning and testing out and trial and error, to get a very pleasing image very quickly. So let's jump into Lightroom. I'll show you where you can download them, and we will get them installed and show you how they work. So our first step in getting a linear profile for our camera is coming over here to Tony Cooper, or I believe it's Cooper, photo website, and the linear profile repository. I will leave a link in the description where you can go down here and get it. Quite simply, a linear profile is just a straight linear profile with no contrast and a curve applied to it. You can see this red line is pretty much what an Adobe standard or a camera standard is going to do to it. And the reason that they do that is so that they have, as Tony says, something that looks familiar to you with a good brightness, good contrast, and it's a good starting off point for a lot of amateurs and people who are there. But for professionals, sometimes we want to have a little bit more control. We want to have less of a hammer and more of a very delicate brush stroke for our contrast and our color. And that is where these linear profiles come in. They are an easier way to get a very neutral, very flat starting point where we can add our own color and our own contrast in a way that really feels nice to edit, or for me it did, as opposed to feeling like you're kind of fighting the raw file sometimes. So he does talk about using the auto button as a great starting point and going from there. You can go fully manual, which is what I eventually did, but I will say that starting with the automatic and then kind of adjusting the auto around there is a great way for you to get started with it. And I'll kind of talk about some of the things I have found that has worked a lot better. As he says here, there's a lot more flexibility that the sliders provide than opposed to using a standard profile. The adjustments are more predictable and they respond better to the movements. There's better shadow recovery and highlight recovery, richer colors, but they are not overly saturated. The hue, saturation, and luminance adjustments just work better, and they have a more pleasing raw conversion. And it does really help when you do ETTR or expose to the right, which is something that I do in a lot of my exterior photos, is try and expose those photos to the right. So when you're here, click on this jump to the camera specific linear profiles. You'll make sure you want to agree to this. You do not have to check his newsletter, but I feel like you should support somebody who offers a bunch of free stuff to you, and they are really good. You click on your camera here to go get them. I have a Nikon. They do have DJI profiles as well. You will click on them. Here's the Z6 III and the Z8. They do keep them nice and up to date. I also have that DJI Air 2S in there. And you will continue shopping, or you can go check out. They are free. You don't have to do anything. Just put an email address to send them to, and you get them. Once you have them, you will unzip them and you will install them. Go over here and you will click on this show profile in your Lightroom development tab, and then you will go to this plus button and you will import those profiles. You will need to restart Lightroom after you import them. They will not show up after they're imported until Lightroom has been restarted. So we'll start here with this just basic drone photo that I did of a house here. We can come in here and this is our starting point, right? So this is where we start. And usually you're going to come in here and start, moving some things around, pull the highlights down, push our shadows up. We want to add a little bit of contrast to it. See how all of a sudden they're getting a little bit too dark. We're only at 25, so then we fight it again here. And we go, yeah, but I still want some contrast, but maybe not that much. And it just, you almost see that even though we're pushing the shadows, we're moving, pushing and pulling, we're pushing and pulling even over here, as just opposed to the shadows. We're actually pushing and pulling the whole thing. This is where those linear profiles come in, and they just tend to work a lot better. Come here, you'll see that linear DJI right here, this is this camera, and it is significantly flatter, but there's a lot more detail into it. So you can start with the automatic button, have it push it all around, and you'll see, yeah, it's still kind of flat. That's okay. Easiest way to fix that is go into this tone curve and select medium contrast. That will bring back a lot of things in here. And see, it's still a little bit hazy as it would be. You can pull your shadows back down if you would like a little bit, increase the contrast a little bit more if you want. You can add some dehaze to it, which will help it. It's a little bit of clarity as well. You can see when we're moving this now, we seem to be, it's still moving a little bit, but these sliders have so much more latitude, have so much more range, and this picture is so much nicer. We can add some more brightness to it. We have a lot more room on here. And this is pretty good. I would probably adjust the white balance a little bit maybe, but that's where it can get you there a lot quicker than if you are on that Adobe color or that Adobe landscape, which this would just be a nightmare of color. And it's a lot better of a photo. Now they do take some time to get used to. We'll click my preset that I have. That is not the correct one. Linear drone one. You can see this is what my preset looks like. I get to. And this looks really, really good to me. It's very nice and neutral. It has beautiful detail in the shadows. It is a little bit lower resolution, but that is because I shot this with the ND filter on it. So when you get towards those edges, you're gonna get a little bit of kind of some fuzziness simply because there's a double piece of glass on it. It's kind of the Air 2S's limitation with the ND filters. And I had a battery go down, so I just haven't had the luxury of being able to bring it back down after doing it, take it off, put it back on. But for what we're doing and for how wide these are, it doesn't matter. You can see, here's what we've done. We've had these. The color mixer has a little bit of, I have the hues changed slightly on this one just to give me a little bit better look to them. Makes things a little bit more natural looking, which I really enjoy. And we have some basic sharpening and just that nice strong contrast on the tone curve. And this is what we get. And I think that is far better than going with something like this, which was my old drone preset, which everything looks really harsh. And it's just, even if you turn that off, it's starting to look a little bit better when you take this off. We can go to like that strong contrast or even that medium contrast. It's a little bit better, but it still looks really harsh in comparison. Linear drone profile just gives it that nice little bit of edge. Same thing goes for, say, like an exterior here. Let's go to this Eagle Lakes one. And same thing, when I used to have my exterior profiles, this is what my exterior would start with. We come in, dial this in. It's a little bit too warm. 5250 is probably going to be good. And let's add, like, I don't know, 14 to it. There we go. And this is where I'm at with my exterior one. You can see we're almost completely pulled on those highlights. We could dump the whites down and then it gets a little bit better. Greens are a little out of control again. It's just something that when you want something to work right, these linear profiles seem to get there a lot faster. And so we can see that if I do my linear exterior, again, take this, adjust this to 5250, it's 14. It is in a much better starting spot. And if we want to, we can come in and we can change this from one of my curves to that medium contrast curve. Even add some more contrast here if you want to. It's just a much nicer, more subtle edit that we can take and we can push and pull a lot more. We're at that 90 now, and it isn't even close to blown out. We have so much more detail in the highs. We have so much detail in the shadows, as opposed to when we have that regular exterior that I was using. And it's just got a lot of contrast. It's pretty dark. It's pretty bright. Even if we crank that all the way down, it's still brighter than if we were using that linear exterior. You can just see we have so much more detail in it, so much more room to push and pull things around. And so linear profiles have been a huge boon for me this year. And they are a little bit harder to work with, like we were talking about. They do take a little bit more work to get them to where they want to be. You'll have to play with your tone curve a bit, but once you have it down, it transfers between images really, really well, and you're able to get a lot more latitude out of it and have a lot nicer looking, more neutral image as opposed to things that are oversaturated skies, things are a weird color, much like we see in here when we have that green that is just flaring a lot. It's on the border of turning yellow, and it's a lot less neutral than when we are in this linear profile. And those are the linear profiles that have really helped me out in my journey this year. Like I said, they have really helped me get the color that I want to, the contrast that I'm looking for. And they did take a little bit of time for me to learn. They were kind of intimidating at first. It was something that I really was not used to, how flat they make images. But I think that with time and with a little bit of practice and testing out different custom contrast curves and doing your own kind of movement of the HSLs to try and push and pull things to the colors that you think were best representative of what you saw, you can really get something that will apply universally to your images across the board. Like I said, it has taken me from, anywhere from about 30 minutes was where I was at with my old presets that was just using the regular built-in camera ones and the Adobe ones, to now it takes me a little bit less than 15 minutes to get, for a normal sized house like we saw in the video or in Lightroom, probably about 10 to 15 minutes, because everything is just easier. It's set up, it's ready to go, and it's universal across all of my cameras or across all of my different photos that I take, because the white balance only needs to be changed and set up correctly, and then everything looks exactly the same, and it is a lot easier for me to get repeatable results really quickly, and it has really sped up my workflow. So I would highly encourage you guys to check it out. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, if you use linear profiles, or if you have found profiles that you like to use. I'm a big advocate of always trying new things and really finding something that kind of gives you a more repeatable, better user experience in Lightroom. And for me, a lot of the time, I love to experiment with camera profiles and LUTs and different things like that. So if you have any, let us know in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate the support, and we will see you guys on the next one.